Thank you, everybody, for joining the EGlaze Chronicles. And I am blessed to have a second return on the EGlaze Chronicles with our friend Bobeth Yates. 11 Alive News, have to say that now.
Yeah.
In the ATL, Bobeth has many years experience. She's been in the A, she's left the A, been in Miami, but she's back in the A again. And we want to just say welcome, Bobeth, and welcome back. Glad you could do this with me.
Well, I am happy to be back, not just on this show, in Atlanta in general. It's a different beast. It's weird because once you've lived other places and you come here and you realize the magic of Atlanta, you always want to come back to experience it. It's the weirdest thing.
You know what? While you was in Miami, you dealt with quite a few stories down there. And
yes.
I think you were during the pandemic, and there was also some the riots issues and all that. Talk about that time period, that Miami period just recently. You had some interesting stories. I see you ran into a few overzealous fans, as they call them. So talk about that time down in that Miami and some of the things that you had to, interesting stories you had to deal with.
Well, Miami was interesting because one, technically Miami is semi-home for me. I'm originally from Jamaica, but we migrated to the South Florida area. So when I left Atlanta, I was like, I've done it. I've done the top 10. I'm going to be close to family. So you have to also see the mindset that I was going into Miami with. And, it was coming, it's in the middle of the pandemic. And I think a lot of people at that point were evaluating their lives, right? And so I was here in Atlanta by myself, except for the job, of course. And I was like, well, I need to be closer to family. So when the opportunity arose for me to transition, I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity. I'll be close to family. And, Miami's a good place to be. It's beautiful. And what I didn't realize is Miami was wide open while the rest of the country was still on lockdown. Miami was like, I moved and I'm thinking we were going from what was happening here in Atlanta to down there, and it was not that okay. I mean, restaurants, bars, lounges, people who lived in other cities were coming there because they were closed in their cities. And it's the first time people were getting out in about a year, and they were hyped to get out, okay? And it was just like we started, how right now in Atlanta, you're seeing the crime starting to increase. They were experiencing all the increases a little before everyone else. So I'm coming here, going down there thinking, oh, this is going to be a kumbaya moment. I'm going to be spending time with family. I can't, love everybody, love everything. And man, it was a chaos. It was chaos. Some of the big stories, when you saw the one where spring break, where it is just teens just hanging out. And my photographer and we had already finished our story. When I say I cared less, I hate to say it this way, but I cared less of what these people were doing. I was just trying to wait on my time to go live. My story was done. My photographer was like, let me get some extra shots to get set up. They see his camera and then just decided that now we were an issue. I'm in the car, minding my own business. He's out there, and I see it happening, and I'm thinking, these are my people. We all Black. Let me just go have a civilized conversation. Man, I got out of that car, and they cared less. I could have been blue, purple, green. They cared less what color I was. They cared less of anything. They didn't care less. We weren't even shooting. They cared less. And they were like, y'all are, what are they? First they started calling me a snitch. And then I was like, are these people serious? First of all, it was crazy. It was really, really crazy. And one thing led to another. Next thing you know, they had drinks in their hands and had thrown everything all over me and all over him. At that point, we decided we were going to start rolling because, at this point, you need to document everything.
Right.
Then they started pushing and hitting, and it just continued to escalate. And at this point, my photographer is like, well, we can't just let this go. And so now he's following them. As we're recording, walking towards officers, running down the street. It was like some scene out of a weird movie. It was absurd. Then after all of that, the station was like, well, you got to go live with it. Talk about what happened to you. And I'm like, what? First of all, I'm drenched in alcohol.
Right.
I am in no position. Like, we just had been interviewed by the police about what happened, and then they're counting me in my ear, talking about, "Go, what is happening?" It was a lot. And it's weird because it wasn't just that experience. It was just all of these other weird experiences that I had never experienced in my career, that I was like, why is this happening now? And again, I've had a pretty hefty career, 20 odd years in the business. And the first time you experience some of these things, you're like, something isn't right with people.
Right.
And it was just like I think we had just gotten to a place where everybody was just had so much pent up energy that they wanted to release it. And then it's the first person they saw was the person you were going to release on. And for me, it was sad because once the police got involved, and at the end of the day, these were kids.
Yeah.
And now you're about to be arrested in Miami. You were supposed to be on vacation over something like this. And as a Black woman, I always try to, especially in news, I always try to see, sympathize with the person where they're coming from. And I was like, this is a kid. He's going to have to call his mom. She's going to have to call their mom. Now they're going to have a record for assaulting two people from TV and their equipment that cost probably more than their year's salary.
Yeah.
Like, news equipment isn't cheap.
No.
And I was like, are these children serious? And it was sad for me because now I'm a witness to the crime. And they were like, are you guys going to prosecute? And the station is like, yes. And I'm like, one little mistake.
Yeah. This. You bring up a good point about, I got two questions off that story. One, when does safety come more important than the story? Because I'm hearing you getting drinks poured on you, you getting all this, and in your ear they're saying, hey, you still need to go live with it. You like, can I get cover first? They we don't know what else they have. You still, they got this. So let me start with that. When does safety, because you do a lot of these stories in certain neighborhoods and certain things, when does safety come more important than the story?
Well, you like to believe safety is always the most important thing from the story. But the reality is there's always undue pressures that no one ever is thinking about. I'm one of those people. It's like, if you give me a task, I feel the responsibility to complete the task. And if I don't, I always feel like I fail the team. So I struggle with finding that balance where some of my photographers is, lack of better word, be like, fuck this shit. You're like, deuces. Like, I ain't doing this with you. But for me, though, I struggle with it because they tell you all the time when you go to a scene and you feel unsafe, you can pull out. But the reality is, if you do, the show's going to be impacted. There's a hole that you were supposed to fill that now they have to find someone to fill. If you don't fill it, someone else on the team has to figure it out. So now you're putting another team member in a situation where they're either going to be ill prepared or look funny on TV because they weren't ready, and things are moving in such a fast pace. And so for instance, let's say they killed my story because I said I was unsafe. The anchor isn't ready because they weren't planning on this. Now they, in that anchor's ear, saying fill time. The anchor is like, what are you talking about? Now that anchor is embarrassed on television because it's something I did. You see what I'm saying? But, so I struggle with that balance because when they look bad, they're upset. And it's not anything they did. It's something that someone else did. So I struggle with finding that balance to say, cut it now. I can't.
Yeah.
And so I may wait longer than most to pull the plug. Okay. So I'll say, okay, it's not that bad yet. It's not that bad yet, but it's bad, right? It's literally bad. There are times where I'm like, oh my God, I am about to have myself a nervous breakdown. Yeah. And I'm like, this is bad, but you're trying not to pull the plug yet and hoping that some way you can figure it out to get back on track. There are times that you do, and there's times that you don't. There's times when you're like, you know what? Someone just people have pulled guns on us now. Like, since the Trump era, everyone is really anti-media and they're so aggressive. They're ready to pull a weapon in or fight you. Or there was a time where news was kind of off the limits, but at the same instance, you hear about kids, girls, ladies, women getting shot. So what's the difference between us now and a child? And if they're shooting children, hell, what's the difference between us?
Yeah.
And so, when I'm looking at it, thinking about it from that perspective, it's like you get into those instances, like earlier this year in Orlando, the gentleman who was shot at the scene. You would have never heard of that 10 years ago.
Oh,
and so it's this balance where we used to do these same scary things, but the outcome wasn't bad. And now, because the times have changed, you're second guessing the basic things you used to do, because now you just never know how someone is going to take it and how far they're going to take it.
So along with that, does competition play in that as well? Because I can see you saying, it's too dangerous for me. But if the news channel have that story, you're like, dang, I was just there, and they run with it. Does that have something to do as well with your decision?
Yeah, you never want to be the first one to pull out. So if you pull out and then the station sees the other station there, they're going to be like, well, if it was so dangerous, why are they still there? Right. And again, it comes back down to no one wants to be that person that messes up the bigger picture of the show. So you're always trying to find, okay, I can 2 more seconds, 1 more minute. Okay, if I can get this done in 1 more minute, then I'll go. And you're just literally trying to see, as long as you can, how long you can stay before things escalate. And you personally are in a place where you're in danger. And sometimes it can be hard. Or how far you can go. You go to try to get to a scene and you're trying to get as close as possible to the scene where the shot's better, but really the safe place is all the way back here. And if the other station has a shot that you don't have, they're going to ask you, how did that station get this shot? Why is your shot not showing anything in the background? So you think of all of those things, but as the reporter, you have extra pressure. So not only are you feeling the pressure from the station saying, okay, we need the best shot, we need the best story, level of competition, but sometimes you may be working with a photographer who most of the times ends up being the voice of reason. And they're like, no, we're not going to get this shot. Are you stupid? And so you have the pressure from them on one side saying, no, I'm not setting my camera up there. You're not going to kill me for this story. And then you have the pressure from the station itself saying, okay, we want the best because we want to beat the competition. So you're in the middle trying to figure out, okay, where can I give and where can I get? And, trying to find that balance. So it can be tough. And it can be unnecessarily tough, especially with the way society has adjusted in the last few years.
That takes me to today, I say post-COVID.
Yeah.
You've been in the game for 20 years. You've seen stuff grow. And we're still in a state of trying to figure things out, the new state, figuring things out. What has been the biggest change for you? You talked about a couple of things, the Trump era, COVID, but since that time, since COVID, we back on the streets, as they say. We're back in the streets. We're back out. What's been the biggest change you've seen?
I'm outside. The biggest change for me, I think, is the mindset. I think that there was a point where, regardless of where you stood on a topic, you always could find common ground. I think now, if you disagree with someone about anything, it escalates to an argument, violence, and a negative situation. And so that has been hard, not just going to the stories where those things are manifesting, how, random arguments now turning into shootings, but also with how people address us, how they communicate with us. Like, I can call you and ask you for an interview where before you would just say, no, thank you. Now you're getting cussed out and calling all kinds of names. I think people it's hard to adjust to being the villain when you technically don't believe you're the villain.
It's still needed. It becomes, especially local media. I think it's more of a need than anything, because national is quick, and social media is quick if you don't get the stories like you want them. But for you, since coming back to Atlanta, how did Atlanta change for you when you came back? You know, you left during the pandemic. You was Miami. I feel like it's two different Atlantas. You know, Atlanta was one way, but Atlanta's more
pre-pandemic Atlanta and post-pandemic
yeah,
Atlanta.
different now. What were some of the changes you saw when you came back?
I was shocked to see the amount of crime that and where the crimes were happening now. And touching on that same topic of how small things are becoming like escalating. I pre-pandemic, I felt Atlanta was just like this city that loved Black, celebrated everything Black, and supported each other. Now I feel we're just a lot more segmented. Perfect example, the song that came out a couple years ago was like, "This Isn't Atlanta."
Yeah.
And, you know, and it was like, if you're not part of this block or you're not part of this area, you can't claim Atlanta. And I think prior to the pandemic, it was just Atlanta. Yeah. You claimed it, you didn't have to, don't get me wrong, people still rep their little areas or their neighborhoods or wherever their little, not, I can't, and when I say little, I'm not saying it's small and, right. I'm just talking, they rep their street, they rep their city, they rep their park, yes. But in general, it was just we from Atlanta, it's Atlanta. And everybody in Atlanta was for Atlanta and was like almost on the same page type. And I think now it's just like, if you're not from my neighborhood or you're not from my area or you're not from this, it's just back to being segmented.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing I'm saying. It was no question, no matter what part you was Atlanta. It was College Park, East Point, that's Atlanta. We don't care. And it does seem to be that way.
Yeah, and if you went to another city, let's say you were out and you saw another Atlanta person, it didn't matter if they were from East Point or, you know, I don't know, Gwinnett. It was still Atlanta, and you were still able to connect and laugh and have a drink and, you know, maybe even do a quick dance together. I don't know. Right. But my point is, but now it's, if you're not from the home street, you're not part of the home crew. And it's just so segmented. And so I feel because of that, some of the love, the love that I gained when I first got here, I think that has depleted a little.
Interesting take. I've noticed that as well. I guess I'm older and seeing it from, I can see that as well. But talk about you and your career and what Bobeth has learned over this period of time. You know, I see you still doing reporting, you've done anchor, but is there still that excitement for you when you wake up and you know you don't know what story you're about to jump on? You're like, all right, well, let's go. Is there still that when you get out of bed in the morning, like, let's go, I'm ready to go? What do I got today? Is there excitement for you when you get up every day?
It's still pretty exciting because you still never know what you're getting into. And it's always that challenge of trying to figure out, how do I get this task done by the deadline? And their day of deadlines. Okay. You have the meeting in the morning and at 9:30, they're saying, this is what we need by 5. And so, you know, you have that challenge of trying to piece this puzzle together. Who am I going to talk to? What are they going to say? How am I going to put it together? So that's still exciting. But I think that one of the things that I am appreciating now is, especially just coming from Atlanta, just celebrating. I hate to say, well, you know what? I don't hate to say this, especially on Juneteenth, celebrating Black people. There's no other city that you can go to, or very few other cities, maybe DC, that you can go to where you see the people that are in charge are those that look like you, those that are trying to improve, and you're celebrating. You're not the only one in the room. And I did miss that in Miami. Don't get me wrong. They have a Black population, but it is vastly overshadowed by some of the other cultures there. And so it was almost like going back to seeing one of us in each meeting, or one person in charge, or if they weren't in charge, they were lower on the totem pole. So I love being back and being able to be in the room where the city manager, the mayor, or the I don't know, like the head of a company, and to see that they are like you and had a similar path as you, not necessarily from, the great history or background, but whatever humble beginnings, they made the best of it and are continuing to move forward. And that, when I say, I don't care how bad it gets, that for me still makes Atlanta one of the best places, because it gives you encouragement even when you are down, to say, look, they still going, and I'm sure they have gone through whatever it is at work, but they still try to put their best foot forward, and they still keep moving forward. And so for that, I still drinking the Atlanta Kool-Aid.
Drinking it. Another Kool-Aid you drink is your Caribbean heritage. Did
Yes.
I say that? Because
Yes.
you get into you do all the, what's the festival every year? You used to dress
Carnival.
up, the carnivals and all that. How proud are you of that culture?
I am very proud of being Jamaican. I feel like one of the reasons I am so well-rounded is because of my Jamaican heritage. I was born there. When we migrated here, we lived in Fort Lauderdale, which also has a pretty high Jamaican population. So it wasn't really till college that I was really immersed in American culture. And now combining the two and being able to grow in both, I think is amazing. I don't want to ever forget where I'm from as I grow. And I think it helps me also better relate, and just be proud of myself. The little Jamaican girl that was from Kingston, walking up and down the street probably without no shoes, and now I'm on television and inspiring and helping people tell their stories, those who wouldn't normally have an opportunity. And I think because of my past, I'm more sympathetic to people. It's I understand what it's like to not have a lot. I understand some of the struggles, and I think that makes me a little bit more, I don't know, just sympathetic and easier to talk to. I can relate to people, and when they say certain things, I think a lot of times if you're not part of the culture or understand it, you may misunderstand the message that's being said, and sometimes not convey it the way that individual is trying to convey. And I think because of my past and my understanding, I have an innate ability to really to do that. So proud of it.
That was kind of what I was going, because when you talk about stories, it's almost like you have to have that 24-hour mentality, because one story could be this, and the next story you have a whole different story. But for you, how much of it is, can you put your heart in something? And I don't mean that as putting, you do your best work, but when you talk to that person and being sympathetic, how can you because you can't get too attached. I mean, I'm sure it hangs in your head for a while, but you still, this person has lost somebody or something's missing. They can't pay their bill or something. You want to be sympathetic to them, but you also got to be, I still got to put this story out. How do you, what's that balance, that fine line that you have to walk?
So I think the key is, when you're telling the story, is I try to present it from the perspective that I'm being given. So if this person says to me, I'm hurt, I'm feeling kind of pain, I'm not going to try to imagine their pain and rephrase it. I'm going to try to present it how it's being presented to me. And so that's the difference. I think what people do is they try to interpret and then disseminate, and in the process of that redissemination is where the translation is lost, because you can't truly understand the pain that person is going through, because you aren't going through that loss.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't just like lose your daughter. You don't have to deal with this, or just lose your mother. You can get to go home tomorrow or tonight and go back. So sometimes what happens is we get to a scene and the people say something and we're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would someone do this? Or why would someone do this? And then you're telling the story through a lens that you have processed their information and decided if it's good, bad, in between, or whatever. I try not to do that. And I think, again, my background allows me to, because I can look at it and say, hell, no one would be able to explain why I would run down the street without no shoes. People will think that's crazy. While someone from that culture will be like, you just didn't put on your shoes. And so you look differently. So I try to let them tell it through their words and not try to interpret their words. And I think that's why we need more people of color in these spaces, because when you interview a person and you truly don't understand where they're coming from, you can't truly present their story. You can't, if you don't know what it's like to not have food or not have something that a basic necessity, you can't express that struggle. If that makes any sense.
Makes a ton of sense. Yeah.
And so I think that's why, because most people are like, well, like, I know I'm off topic. Perfect example. We were doing a story or having a discussion in the newsroom the other day about student loans. Mm-hmm. And for most people that are of minority culture, student loans, those federal student loans, were the only way we could go to college. And so predatory lending from the government wasn't something you were thinking about. You were thinking about, I need this loan to go to school. So now, we were having the discussion and they were talking about, well, I don't understand what the big deal is. They, they got the loans, they need to pay it back. And it took someone that understood that concept to say, well, no, we got the loans and yeah, we are paying it back, but we've also paid in 300 times more than what we got. You're talking about people that got loans for $40,000 in 2000 that are still paying those $40,000 loans and have probably paid over $80,000 thus far. And so there's a difference. And without having someone that understood that concept there, on the surface, it makes sense. Like, you got a loan, you agreed to this, you signed the Pell Grant, you signed whatever loan grant. So yeah, you got to pay it back. But at what point do you take it out of those basic facts and look at the bigger picture of how much have they paid? Is this in any way taking advantage? Is it taking advantage of a specific group? Who is that? And how is it impacting that group? But unless you have that understanding, you wouldn't even go that place with a story. And so I think that's part of having that background, seeing and being around people that had similar concerns and now seeing the impacts of that and telling the story through the full picture, not just on the surface without the details and the intricacies that make it different. But to lighten it back up, like, every opportunity I get, not just because of the history of being Caribbean, every opportunity I get, I try to celebrate my culture. If there's something Jamaican going on, I literally will just go to a Jamaican restaurant just to support, because I know it's hard when you've completely been removed from everything that is your norm and now are having to adjust in a new society and trying to assimilate. And I don't think it's just, Jamaicans. I think that's any Caribbean culture, any foreigner, even people that are from other states. I think it's the same concept. You move to Atlanta from wherever because you have a vision of something you want to accomplish here. And now you're here alone trying to adjust and learn and, come together. And, maybe people in the city aren't necessarily accepting you. So I think that I sympathize with just situations like that and try to help or be as polite to people as possible because of that.
That's awesome. Because that's a great, I wish everybody had that mindset that sometimes I just want to support because of what it is, even for, I try to do it even way from where I'm at. I'm still like, I'm going to support this restaurant because it is African-American. Why not right here with me? So why not support each other? So I like that. I'm going to light it up a little bit myself. I got a fun question and we're going to finish up with another question. All right. So in each of these areas, I want to tell me the one song or artist that reminds you of that area. Okay. Let's start in Jamaica.
All right. So right now, any sound?
Any sound that you say, oh, that's Jamaica. That reminds me of Jamaica.
Okay, well, of course, anytime you think of Jamaica, you think Bob Marley, but I was going to think of something a little bit
Let's get new. Okay,
more
let's get new.
today.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So right now, it is just one of the newest artists down there is this guy named Valiant,
Okay.
and so I'm big on him now, and so when I think Jamaica, I'm thinking Valiant now. It's like the new age of Jamaican music, the younger generation taking over.
Let's go to the bottom, as we say. Miami. What
Trick
reminds
Daddy,
Trick
Trick Daddy Dollars.
Trick Daddy. It's funny. My friend just did an interview with Rolling Out with JT Money.
Uh-huh.
Tell him I was a big Poison Clan fan back in the day, so that kind of reminds me of the Poison. We got to do it right here. What reminds you of the ATL? What's that sound that you? It could be new. It could be what makes you say, "Oh, that's a loud right there." That's
Goody
that
Bob.
Ooh. Have you seen him in person recently? Have you seen a concert?
Not recently.
Yeah,
but back in, yeah, I've seen it before.
They still do it. You know, I'm an outcast person myself.
Any
new artist? Any new artist?
New artists? No. Like it's weird. I'm not. So I struggle. I don't know. No, I don't have a new artist, and I don't want to say any. And the next thing you know, next time I go to a YSL case, next like, oh, I got problems. I'm not. I don't know. I don't know.
I heard what you said, you know, but what's pumping now? What you listening to now? What's kind of what you've been rocking the last few weeks or few days?
I noticed the ladies are taking over. You got a lot of female rap artists and even just singers that are like taking over now. So I've been big on Thames. She's more Afro beats. Yeah. I also City Girls. It's funny, but I love City Girls. From the first album, I probably can sing every single word. Be in my car bumping it.
Yeah. Girl doing it. City Girl doing it. I see Young Miami all doing their thing out there.
One of my it's not new, but one of my favorites like go-to songs now though is that Usher and City Girls mix. It has like this. It has like it's like an old school vibe.
Yeah,
it brings me like in a chill mood. So I'm liking that a lot.
I'm trying to get into the Afro beats a little bit better. I kind of like that genre, so I'm getting that. I'm trying to catch up with it. I'm still old school hip hop. I still think, you know, Killer Mike just released the album recently, so I'm into that.
I haven't heard it. I gotta go listen to it.
He just did it like this week, so okay. He's got a cut with Andre 3000 on in the future. It's Killer's doing his thing. I gotta keep listening to it to get some more.
All right, I'm gonna
finish with this, Bobeth, and thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you working with me today. What's next?
What's next? So I think you asked this, but I didn't answer it right. So being back at 11 Alive has been amazing. Literally more than I can imagine. As you know, I'm also a meteorologist. And so what they have fortunately allowed me to do is more weather. Like, for instance, I'm doing weather this weekend, and now I'm almost like their designated filling any one of the main people aren't there. So I hope in the next few years to transition full time to just doing weather and possibly just more reporting on special projects if it, you know, when there's something big or something else going on. But so that's the plan. It will take some time to transition because I am in a current contract that stipulates that I cannot do all of those changes.
Right.
So this is more of a next 5 year within the next 5 years type plan.
You open that door. So I'm gonna jump in it. This weather patterns that we've seen this year, is it like norm or is it just because it's looked a little, you know, like everybody talking about now, it's still springish in June. We had a winter, it looked like. Is this El Nino or La Nina?
It is, exactly. That's where I was about to go. So we have just transitioned into an El Nino pattern, which tends to be a little bit more wet with more stuff coming from the tropics. And it just, so because of that, we're cooler. But we just came out of the opposite, the La Nina, where it was hot, just unnecessary, like up and down kind of foolishness. So we will start to see a transition that we are transitioning now. And once the transition is finished, we're going to see even into the next few months, just a lighter. It also will be cooler this winter because of it. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's gonna be generally cooler, generally wetter. So good luck.
Oh,
Good luck this summer. Not snow.
she does it all. Answer weather, news. Bobeth Yates. Thank you again, Bobeth. We're glad to have you back in the A. You know, like I said, and you know, I'm still tripping off that Miami story because I was like, why she look like she just jumped in the ocean when she did that? But I didn't know it was alcohol.
That was why, and I smelled like I was swimming in the bottle. You know that song. Like,
yeah,
I felt like I was in a swimming pool, and like as I walked, all I was smelling is the liquor, like everywhere. I was like, this is so annoying. And then I had to stay out there till like midnight because we had an 11 o'clock hit, and then after the 11, they wanted to tape something for like 11:30, and then we had to get off the beach, and it was like hella traffic. I was like, this is so annoying. These damn people. Look, kids, I was so mad at them. It's like, where are they parents?
Bobeth, y'all. Thank you so much, Bobeth. We'll end it with that. Where are your damn parents?
Where are their parents?
Well, thank you guys, and thank you for another edition of the EGlaze Chronicles. We'll be back, but you know, check out Bobeth. Where can they find you at, Bobeth?
Well, you can find me on all social media platforms at Bobeth Yates. Super simple and easy to find, or 11 Alive's website, or 11 Alive 5 and 6 o'clock newscast, and every now and then on our sister station, WATL at 7 and 10.
And also, man, shout out to beautiful Bobeth. They follow her too. So
yes, I have to give him credit because I don't even manage my own social media that well. But so he's doing.
I had to look sometime like, did Bobeth put that out there? Why she didn't post that? Like, why she didn't post it? This is a great thing to post.
Right? That man is good.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. We'll talk with you later.
All right, bye.
Bye.